Hello, I would like to welcome you to today's Momentum webcast, Transform Your Data with Microsoft Business Intelligence Solutions. For more Microsoft webcasts, go to microsoft.com/webcasts. I'd now like to hand it over to our presenter today, Nick Smith, Senior Product Manager with Microsoft. Nick?
Great, thanks Eric. Appreciate the time and appreciate everybody joining today. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world today. My name is Nick Smith. I am a Product Manager in our corporate marketing group in Redmond, in Washington, with Microsoft. And today, really wanted to just drill into the BI story from Microsoft and tell the story from perspective of Office and some of the new things, some of the things that are available today, as well as some of the new things that are coming down the line, and give you guys a little bit more insight into what the strategy is, what the vision for Microsoft Business Intelligence is, and then how that spins into or bleeds into Microsoft Office and starts to hit on other people within the organization, other people within your organization. And we're going to drill into some of the personas of who those people are and what they're trying to accomplish. So the agenda today, talk about the vision for business intelligence. I'm going to talk about the challenges across the organization in terms of an executive or a knowledge worker or an information worker and what those types of folks are trying to accomplish in the organization. And then we're really going to drill into the Office side and talk about things like SharePoint, talk about things like Excel, as well as talk about a new product offering that is going to be released later this year called Microsoft Office Performance Point Server. And this is something you may or may not have heard of. This is a combination of products, so we're going to get into what those products are, what's existing today, and what's going to be new later on this year, and then drill into some examples, some relevant customer examples that we'll be able to share with you and hopefully kind of bring it home a little bit. I wanted to kick things off by talking about one of the top level things that Microsoft is talking across all of these different categories, and you start to think about all of the technologies that Microsoft is investing into. How are we really driving the performance of an organization? How are we allowing your people in your organization to really make an impact and achieve agility, be able to control information, monitor information, have security around information, and really drive their business forward? And who are those people within the organization? So I wanted to level set in terms of the people ready message that Microsoft is talking about, and start from that and really drill into now the BI component of that people ready message. And I wanted to start to talk about this from the perspective of not necessarily Microsoft, but what all of you are saying. What are our customers saying about what are the areas of business intelligence? What are some of the aspirations that we have and challenges that we have in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with business intelligence? And it really starts with this first layer that I've outlined here, having sound infrastructure or having sound data, and data that is integrated. As we think about organizations, whether it be a mid-sized organization or a large enterprise organization, many times we're talking about multiple data systems, multiple source systems of information that is in an unstructured format or is coming in from potentially an acquisition that an organization made. So new data is making its way into an organization all the time. How can we start to have consistency around that information? How can we have a scalable factor and a scalable approach to managing that information? This, as we'll see, this really starts to get into your data warehousing approach and starting to talk about data integration, ETL technologies, and all and that side of the fence. As we move up through the spectrum, the second layer that I'm going to hit on, and now this starts to get into more of Microsoft Office and some of the functionality in Office can provide. But the aspirations out there in the market today really hit on areas of productivity. How can I increase the performance of my job? How can I make better decisions with this information? And how can I do that in a very simple way in an environment that is familiar to me, and an environment where I can share with my peers, my colleagues, so that they can collaborate around that information? And as we see technologies in the market today and advances of technologies, for instance, the Web 2.0 kind of phenomenon, we start to see a lot of this ability to share information and ability to pass context around information in very seamless ways. And how does that grow in the business intelligence world in terms of making better decisions in your organization? And then that third layer, and this is really the layer that we're going to hit on today, moving above, up, and beyond Office and into now more of a performance management approach. So how is my information aligned to the goals of my company, of my organization? How can I place accountability down through that alignment, accountability across maybe multiple departments, or accountability to multiple people, executive accountability, and how can I drive agility within my organization? And if we take a look at those three pillars or those three categories, and we now start to plug in, well, from a Microsoft Business Intelligence, what are the categories that start to fit into those areas? So within the data layer, we're really talking about the integration, the manageability, the storage capacity, the data warehousing capabilities. That second tier, we're now really starting to get into reporting and analysis, as well as dashboards and being able to drill into information and do ad hoc queries on that information. And then on that third tier, where we're looking at more of a performance management approach and extending our capabilities with business intelligence, we're looking at scorecarding, monitoring metrics, doing planning and budgeting, bringing in the financial cycles, as well as financial consolidation and advanced visualization and advanced analytics to allow you to drill into that information and understand the who, what, when, and why. And those are the areas that we're going to hit on today, and those are the areas that I'm going to talk about when I'm talking about Performance Point Server. Okay, so to talk about this in a bit of a different way, and now start to drill into who are those people in the organization, what are they trying to accomplish. This is an analyst slide that kind of spells out who are those people in the organization and how do they use business intelligence. And if we start at the top and we talk about executives, there's usually only a handful of executives in an organization, and generally their BI is delivered to them. They're rarely hands-on users of business intelligence. It's really that second tier of the knowledge workers where we're talking about a few dozen. These are the business analysts that are typically building out dashboards and scorecards, building out reports, building out information, putting context around information to pass that to executives. And these are really the knowledge workers are really the folks that we're seeing that are using the core business intelligence tools. And when I say core business intelligence tools, I'm really hitting on the core reporting and analytic ad hoc capabilities, query and analysis tools, to be able to pull information out from a data source and be able to wrap some context around it. The opportunity, as the analyst community really talks about business intelligence, is how to reach that other 85%. So if you think of the executives and the knowledge workers really only touching 15% of the organization, what about everybody else within that organization? How can business intelligence start to meet their needs, and how can it meet their needs in very simple ways? And if you think about this group, and we'll drill into this group a little bit more, how can this group start to get information in a familiar environment, as well as in an environment where they're not having to learn new tools? Typically, the everybody else category, these are people that just have a job to do and really don't want to rely on IT and don't really want to learn a new skill set, or don't have time in their jobs to learn a new skill set. And how can we increase and help their ability to make better decisions with business intelligence? So that's the area that we're really going to drill in today. I have another slide here. This is another analyst slide that really speaks to kind of from a strategic and tactical and operational perspective, where do executives and analysts and people that are more on the operational side of the business fit in terms of their number of decisions that they make, and then the strategic value that decision has an impact to the business. So from an executive standpoint, they're probably making a fewer number of decisions, but more strategic in nature. And then as we move into the analysts, they're probably making more decisions, but more on a tactical approach. And then as we move into operations, very much operationally focused, and they just simply have a task to do in their jobs. So the Microsoft vision, if we start to take a look at who all these people are in the organization and the different types of roles that they have and the needs that they have with information, if we start to look at executives, knowledge workers, and analysts and information workers, from a strategic and tactical and operational perspective, they all have different needs, and they have to be served up information in different ways. So an understanding of that, and understanding of how that all fits together towards driving better performance in the organization. And what we're really talking about here is the integration of components. And we're going to drill into that and drill into what some of those components are from a Microsoft Office perspective. The third bullet point there in terms of enterprise grade and affordability, we'll hit on some pricing topics as we drill into performance point. But being able to now address the market with solutions that are affordable, as well as kind of span into organizations, both large enterprises and small enterprises. So I wanted to walk through the kind of the end-to-end Microsoft Business Intelligence stack, and I'll start this slide from the bottom and kind of work my way up. And from the BI platform perspective or infrastructure perspective, we're really focusing in on the SQL Server. So I haven't spent much time kind of talking about the products, but this is where we can start to paint a picture for what does the integrated end-to-end Microsoft Business Intelligence stack really look like. So at the base, you're talking about SQL Server and the components that fit into SQL Server. So shipping with SQL Server is integration services, and that's the ETL capabilities to bring data in from multiple data sources. Analysis services, and that's really the OLAP functionality to be able to create cubes off of information in the data warehouse. And then reporting services is your core reporting functionality. All that bundles together within SQL Server 2005. As we move into the next layer, that middle layer, really starting to talk about Office. And this is the layer where SharePoint comes into play, in terms of SharePoint being that infrastructure layer, or SharePoint being that glue layer, that portal infrastructure to be able to serve up that information. As well, there's new capabilities within Office and within Excel to now leverage information that's within analysis services. So connecting directly to analysis services with Excel. And that's new functionality that's available in Office today. As we move up to the top of this stack, we're hitting on what's called performance management applications. And today, what's existing is a product called Business Scorecard Manager, and this is a scorecarding tool to allow you to build out key performance indicators and align metrics, building out your scorecards, as well as a product that was acquired about 8 months ago called ProClarity. And these are analytics that have a very nice affinity with analysis services to be able to drill into and provide deeper context. So this top layer really starts to come together with Performance Point Server in 2007, releasing later this year. So those two bits, or those two products, Business Scorecard Manager and ProClarity, are what is existing today. When Performance Point Server 2007 releases later this year, a third component is going to be added, and that is a component around planning and budgeting. And we're going to drill a little bit more into what planning and budgeting really starts to mean, and how those three components are really baked together. But I wanted to give you a context of Performance Point in the broader Microsoft BI end-to-end stack. Now, one of the things that's not on this slide that is also kind of in the background, if you will, or another area of business intelligence that you might be wondering about is Microsoft's applications play into CRM and the Dynamics play. So Microsoft dynamics and how that fits into. So Microsoft is continuing to push into CRM capabilities in terms of getting information in, and then the BI components about getting that information out and painting context around it. So I would also just want to comment on that. So as we see kind of these two categories, you can think of Microsoft Office as that top portion of the stack, and then SQL Server as that platform piece. So let's talk a little bit about what the analysts are saying about performance management. We'll start to drill into the performance management approach, the Microsoft vision towards performance management, and then we'll start to get into Performance Point Server and talk about some of the components. So from an analyst perspective, Gartner has spent a lot of time talking about corporate performance management, and probably about 4 years ago, their agenda 3 to 4 years ago was talking all about CPM as it related to the office of the CFO, and financial planning and budgeting, financial consolidation. And it really all started with having an approach around planning and budgeting. That perspective is really expanded now in the last 2 years, and you have an analyst like Gartner talking about, well, it's not just about planning and budgeting, but it's about a broader approach towards performance management, and that incorporates analytics, and that incorporates scorecards and dashboards. So you have a much more of a pervasive approach now in terms of the analyst community talking about performance management. What they also talk about is high-performing organizations, and what are some of the characteristics of what those high-performing organizations are, and how are they accomplishing that, and understanding that performance and performance management is a process that people embark on, and it's important to know where you are in terms of your business intelligence maturity and your road to reaching high performance. So there's a couple of categories here that I'm putting up on this slide, and they start from an operational perspective, moving into aligning and accelerating. I'll drill into these with a few points. So if we start from a tactical perspective, and the kind of axes are moving from tactical to strategic, and then along a timeline of 3 to 5 years, we see a lot of organizations that are in this operational bucket, where there's not really a methodology that they're trying to align to. Their planning process is manual in nature. They're looking at financial metrics, but really their BI strategy is centered around spreadsheets and getting information in spreadsheets, and that's kind of one of the common problems that we're seeing today with information that's inconsistent or one version of the truth, kind of getting to that perspective of having information all over the organization in multiple versions and multiple spreadsheets. As we kind of move up the stack towards aligning, now we're talking about, well, taking on a methodology like balanced scorecarding methodology, or a quality initiative like Six Sigma, and how is this starting to impact on their financial planning, and across different departments now starting to understand what are the key metrics that I need to track in those departments, and what are the things that matter to that business, and how can I start to get information that's going to drive behavior in those departments. But at the same time, in this kind of category, we're still seeing a lot of pockets of business intelligence throughout the organization, a lot of different tools, a lot of different reporting and analysis tools, as well as silos of data. If we look across mid-market organizations and enterprise organizations, there's data silos everywhere in terms of different data marts, or multiple, and oftentimes there's multiple data warehousing approaches, depending on the size of the organization. Some of the challenges there. As we get into the accelerating category, we're really talking about bringing in a methodology that's going to permeate across the organization and starting to close the loop on performance management. When I say close the loop, I'm talking about being able to plan and analyze and monitor around information, and then have that tie back into the next iteration of plan. So continually making steps forward and kind of improving on what you're trying to accomplish. And then getting into the leading category, this is obviously where we're starting to really be innovative in terms of the methodology that a business is taking on, and kind of continually growing and continually planning, extending their scorecard practice out to an enterprise scorecard approach where they can start to align accountability across the organization, as well as and this is something interesting that the analysts talk a lot about, is pushing BI out to their customers and allowing partners or customers to be able to be exposed to business intelligence that's going to help them in what they're trying to accomplish. So the next thing I'm going to jump into here is talking about some of the personas within an organization, talking about from an executive standpoint, from an information worker standpoint, and from an IT standpoint, what are some of the challenges that they have with business intelligence? What are some things they're trying to accomplish? So from an executive perspective, really they care about a couple of things: accelerating that decision-making process, ability to drive accountability down to that next layer of folks in the organization who are making decisions, and be able to handle that change that's going to occur in an organization. Be able to steer the ship as opposed to being reactive, so proactive being versus reactive. One of the key challenges when it comes to performance management is the time that it takes to be able to get information and be able to get planning and budgeting and forecasting built into the mix. As we talk about information workers are taking from the perspective of I need an environment that's a friendly environment, an environment that I'm comfortable working in, and a familiar environment, as well as the ability to collaborate around information and be able to share that information across their peers or across other colleagues that they're working with. And really the challenge that we're talking about with information workers is the time that they spend on collecting and validating that information so that they can do that analysis and be able to make those decisions. A lot of their time is spent on trying to understand if the data that they're looking at is consistent and if the data is reliable, is it trusted. When we get into talking about IT, IT is really starting to look at reducing the complexity and taking a look at all those multiple systems, right? Getting back to that data layer that I was speaking about at the beginning around having sound information, having sound data. The challenge here is really disparate systems. From a performance management perspective, we're talking about multiple systems that folks within IT need to start to think about and integrate. How do those systems start to come together? From a financial perspective, oftentimes there's multiple systems that have general ledger information and budgeting systems that they have to pull into and keep a mind frame about in terms of how that information is now going to be passed out to an analyst or to an information worker. So they need to be able to align to compliance issues. For instance, something like Sarbanes-Oxley. How can I have visibility into that financial information so that I can be compliant in terms of an act like Sarbanes-Oxley? So I wanted to paint out a bit of a scenario in terms of performance management and how it's really addressed today. And if we think about business analysts and information that they're creating today, they're pulling information from data sources that may or may not be kind of facilitated and set up by IT, and then they're taking information, populating it into a spreadsheet, and passing that spreadsheet on to information workers, so that those information workers can get context into their business, into the areas of their business, whether that be sales or marketing or finance or HR. And those information workers are taking that information and they're passing it on. They're collaborating around that information. They're passing it to their colleagues and to their peers. And they're doing that. What they're also doing is creating information silos. So the information workers are taking that information, and a lot of times they're creating their own information sources or their own information databases so that they can, in effect, they're creating their own mini ITs. And they're doing that time and time again. If we jump over to the executives, the business analysts are providing executives with PowerPoint slides, with business information in them, emails. As you start to think about kind of in your jobs, in your roles, the types of things, business intelligence information that you've seen, you've probably seen stuff on websites, in Excel spreadsheets, obviously, it come through email. So there's a variety of tactics that they're taking without a kind of a consolidated or a consistent approach. So the executives, they kind of say, well, is any of this information really relevant by the time I get it? A lot of the times, the time that it takes and the manual nature of doing this type of approach really relates back to the executive in terms of, is this relevant? Is this still relevant to me? So the time factor really comes into play here. So if we flip that scenario and we talk about a scenario where now we can start to look at more of a performance management approach, and what are the types of things that we're trying to do? And we'll start with IT. IT creating that layer of sound information and sound data. So integrating the data sources, pulling it, having a cohesive and a consistent data warehousing strategy where they can bring multiple sources of information in, and then be able to pass that information on in a consistent way to those information workers, so that they can collaborate around the same information, right? Getting to that one version of the truth, and have a platform where they can collaborate, share, and be in an environment in which they're comfortable working. So something that aligns to what they do in their jobs. From an executive standpoint, again, having a methodology in place where we're thinking about all of those various components, but in a strategic nature. So reporting and scorecards and dashboards, analytics, planning and budgeting, financial forecasting. What is the strategy there that an executive can now buy into and be a part of, and be a part of in terms of an iterative process? So they're not only just getting this information, but they're able to interact with it and pass information back, so that it's a continual kind of a closed loop performance management process. So they understand the who, what, when, why, and how, and can hit on those key things that they're trying to accomplish. How is this information aligned across my organization? How can I drive accountability? From an information worker perspective, again, collaboration, user-friendly environment, and being able to paint context around that information. And then from an IT perspective, really wanting to have that flexible, secure, and auditable environment to comply with something like Sarbanes-Oxley. So this is really what I was hitting on when I was talking about a strategy towards performance management. A strategy that's going to allow you to do, I'm going to break it down into three things. And they're highlighted here: monitoring, analyzing, and planning. So how do I have a strategy that allows me to understand what is happening and what has happened, and build a monitoring piece around that? And you can think of that monitoring piece as really having a balanced scorecarding approach. So I can have metrics, drill into key performance indicators, and have a good understanding of what has happened and where am I going. The second layer is, well, we really need to be able to dive deeper into that information and paint context around that information, and have rich capabilities to analyze that information. So why is that number the way it is, or why is that product category not performing well, and drill into those details. So the ability to go to that next level deep and paint context around that information, that's the analyze component. And if you really think about the Microsoft approach and this analyze component, this is where that ProClarity acquisition, the ProClarity analytics, come into play in terms of fitting into this performance management approach. And then this third piece, which is the new piece that we'll release with Performance Point Server, is that planning and budgeting piece, and building context into what will happen. How do I start to take a look at the future of my business from a finance perspective, and paint information around forecasting. What should my numbers look like? What will happen if I do this to my numbers? And again, I just wanted to highlight that this is not just a one-off exercise. A true strategic performance management approach is a continual process that an organization embarks on, and it's really about the journey and not the destination. So, Performance Point Server. I wanted to just have a few bullet points before I drilled into a few slides that'll go into a little bit more detail about the components of Performance Point Server, and we're really going to hit on those three areas of monitoring, planning, and analyzing. And I'm going to paint a little bit of a picture in terms of things like SharePoint and how SharePoint plays a role in sort of the glue or the infrastructure behind all of this. We'll get into that. But announced on June 6, 2006, so last year this product was announced. This is a certified solution by Norton & Kaplan, who are part of the Balanced Scorecard Collaborative Group. As I mentioned, the scorecarding and analytics piece is what's available today. So Business Scorecard Manager as a product and the ProClarity Analytics are available today. And the planning and budgeting piece is what will make up the Performance Point Server product, and that's available later this year. As we start to now drill into those three areas, so plan, analyze, and monitor, what are the key capabilities? What are the key things that really shine through in terms of planning, analyzing, and monitoring? So from the plan perspective, we're really talking about forecasting, planning, and budgeting, having managed business rules, as well as starting now to centralize the metadata. So if you think across multiple finance systems, oftentimes you're talking about terms in different ways, and how do we have a centralized way to talk about, a consistent way to talk about the data on top of the data, and that hits on metadata. In the analyze piece, really talking about that guided analysis, enhanced visualization, so you can paint context around questions that you may have about information, getting to that root cause and doing that root cause analysis. And the monitoring piece, again, strategy around the scorecarding approach, having a personalized view of that information, so a scorecard that relates to what I'm trying to accomplish in my job, in my role, as well as bringing in other components of Microsoft Office. And we'll get into one of those components. One of them mentioned here is strategy mapping. So how can things like Visio and doing strategy maps with Visio now start to tie into this broader performance management approach and a broader approach with scorecards, as well as being able to have that centralized repository for key performance indicators and what the definition of that key performance indicator is. So before we get into kind of those drilling into a little bit deeper into plan, analyze, and monitor, I just wanted to start off this conversation with a slide, a visual of a bunch of information, and information that may be in a spreadsheet or that may be served up on a portal somewhere. And right now I've got a visual of a couple of different individuals and how those individuals are performing over particular quarters. This really doesn't jump out at me on the onset. I mean, I can spend some time and I can look at this spreadsheet and kind of understand it. But what we're really getting at in terms of a performance management approach is I want to be able to have a visual of that information in a very simple way. And this is kind of taking that information that we saw on the previous slide and now painting context around it. So I have a scorecard that is showing me how things are trending. I kind of have a red light, green light status engine in terms of how these things are trending according to plan. And then I have some rich kind of functionality that I can paint context around that information. So how can we serve up that information, that's maybe not so attractive in more of an attractive way? And this is where we start to get into our kind of scorecarding and dashboarding approach. And if we look at this screenshot, this is just an example, but this is being housed within SharePoint, and this would be a specific scorecard that would be appropriate to me, a personalized snapshot of what I need to accomplish in my job. So information that's personalized. So let's keep drilling into some of this. So again, we're in SharePoint right now, and we're on we're on a tab that says scorecards, and we've got a balanced scorecard approach that's kind of served up in front of us here in the middle of the screen. We have indicators that show how specific metrics or specific KPIs are performing in terms of the plan. And we can drill into those specific metrics and get a little bit more context and drill down to that next layer of what actually makes up that metric. And see how those are performing. So for an underperforming metric, maybe I want to drill into that information and get a little bit more context around it. On the right side, we have kind of a richer analytic, or getting back into understanding the why. So being able to paint context around information. And so what you're seeing right here is if I break it down into a kind of a product by product framework, we're looking at SharePoint as kind of as the glue holding all this together. You're looking at Business Scorecard Manager in the middle, providing that scorecarding functionality, and you're looking at the ProClarity Analytics on the right as rich functionality analytics that I can now drill into and get more context around information. So another key component that I wanted to highlight and this now hits on capabilities and functionality within SharePoint, is, and it's a very simple thing, but it's a very important thing, I think, when it comes to the business intelligence discussion around unstructured data. So how can I now bring in other information into my infrastructure, that's relevant to me, that paints a broader picture around that information. So being able to pull in information into the SharePoint and collaborate around that information is pretty important, as well as having, and I hit on this a little bit, bringing into the mix other integration points within the Microsoft Office stack. So Visio, and being able to build out strategy maps with Visio. One of the cool things here, and one of the integration points that's great, is being able to build out a strategy map with Visio and have the key performance indicators that are in your scorecard with Business Scorecard Manager reside within that strategy map too. So as you look at your strategy map, and a strategy map really relates to how things are performing across different segments or different departments within your business: finance, operations, HR, sales and marketing, and how the performance of those areas of the business are relating to one another. You can start to build in key performance indicators that are housed within Business Scorecard Manager to build out that strategy map and really get a much more of a real-time, real-life context around your strategy. And then the third piece I wanted to highlight, and this is again kind of relating back to the glue layer, the infrastructure layer around SharePoint, as well as the functionality that we see within scorecarding. So we have a scorecard here, but being able to paint context around a specific piece of information. So I may see that a specific number is out of line, and I want to be able to collaborate around that information and leave a comment for someone else who might be looking at that information. So having that context to be able to leave comments and interact and collaborate around information. That's something that all of these technologies coming together are really enabling an information worker to do. So I'll drill through the monitoring piece, the analyze piece, and the plan piece, and just give you a few more bullet points before we kind of talk about a few customer examples. From a monitoring piece, we hit on some of these. Certified by Business Scorecard Collaborative, really bringing into play personalization of information and personalization of a specific scorecard, how that relates to me and my role. How can I take the key performance indicators to the next level of information and be able to collaborate around that information. And really, this is one of the key components of driving performance in the organization and aligning that information down across the organization and throughout the organization so that you have a strategy and an approach that you can drive accountability down across the organization to. The analytics component, again, hitting on the ProClarity piece, really talking about the rich functionality that and that next level that you need to go to in terms of analytic capabilities. And again, this really hits on the nice affinity with analysis services and OLAP functionality. So bringing information into a cube and being able to do that multidimensional analysis allows you to get to the root cause of what the question is, but also be able to very quickly change the axis of the information that you're trying to paint context around. For example, if I'm looking at my products by within stores within different countries, I may want to change the axis of that to incorporate a time component. So how are those products performing over a specific time? And then I may want to change the measure in which I'm looking at. So I may be looking at something like gross profit. I maybe want to switch to looking at my margins. So the functionality to be able to swap almost on the fly and paint rich functionality around that information is what you can really start to do with these analytic components with the ProClarity piece. And then the new piece around planning, budgeting, and forecasting, really drilling into the ability to define, modify, and maintain the business models integrated into rules and workflows within your data. And this is really a key component here, is allowing people to do their planning, budgeting, and forecast in an environment in which they're familiar. And if they think of the world of finance, they live and work and breathe in Excel. So having an Excel environment where you can do calculations and forecasting, planning, and budgeting functionality, all served up in a very familiar environment that's tied back to their data and where their actuals are at. So I need to be able to look at where am I at today and where am I going. So having my actuals, which is a consistent view of my data, right? Again, getting back to that trusted information, sound data, and then having a good view of where do I want to go and how can I build in the necessary calculations and the necessary approach to be able to do my planning and budgeting. So customer example. So I've got a couple customer examples. The first one I want to hit on is EMI, and this is a music company, and they deliver music and manufacture and distribute kind of music and media across multiple regions, and have a number of recording companies kind of across the world. And their business challenge when it comes to business intelligence is they have a kind of a digital supply chain in which they have to roll out, and they have different stages within that supply chain. So they have a kind of a vendor management stage, and then they have all of their materials that they need to source, and then they have a kind of almost very similar to like a software product launch, where they're actually having to get that content or get that music out to their customers. And their process for doing this was highly manual intensive, labor intensive in terms of consolidating all of the information that they needed at each stage of that digital supply chain process. So what they looked at was Business Scorecard Manager and SharePoint. So having that scorecarding and functionality and bringing information into SharePoint so they could collaborate around it to really streamline that supply chain management process and understand how they were performing in terms of vendors, time frames in terms of when things were ready, and when they could move on to the next step of that supply chain so that they could get a more consistency and understand their timelines a lot better to be able to move the project forward and have a lot more accuracy in terms of meeting deadlines. And this enabled more efficiency and the ability for them to optimize their sales by having a good pulse and sense of how their supply chain was performing. The next customer I have as an example is Expedia, definitely one that you're probably all familiar with and maybe have booked a flight through Expedia or booked a travel booking through Expedia. And if you've done that, you know that their business is largely around focused on interactivity on the web. So they wanted to look at how they could improve their web performance and get more details into the online presence and how could they better serve their online customers um, and be able to drill into their key performance indicators and their strategy around their website performance. So they wanted to they wanted to use a balanced scorecard approach, again using Business Scorecard Manager, and provide web metrics and kind of key performance indicators to their analysts so that their analysts could have a better pulse in terms of how their web statistics were performing. And the benefits really here were being able to drill into their web operations, and this is really allowing for a better customer experience because they can understand now how different booking systems are working and how different customers are utilizing the web and what different pages that they're going to and how they're using that information. So better customer experience, as well as a lot of time being saved on the analyst side internally with Expedia in terms of being able to crunch those numbers. So I'm just going to wrap up, but before I did that, I wanted to highlight to all of you an event that's coming up that's probably useful for you to know, and it's very exciting for us here at Microsoft. We're having a first ever BI conference. It's an inaugural event in Seattle, Washington, May 9th to 11th. There's a link there for more information, but I just wanted to highlight this to you. We're going to have a lot of customer information, a lot of customers are coming to present. So great opportunity to learn what other folks are doing, great opportunity to kind of learn some more about the strategy and vision that Microsoft is pushing towards with business intelligence. And with that, I'd like to drill into some Q&A. We've probably got about 5-10 minutes left, so I'll check out the question panel and answer a few questions.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. I would like to remind you, if you wanted to submit a text question, you can do that by using that Ask button down there towards the bottom of your screen. We'll be getting to your questions, as Nick said, in just a moment here. For upcoming and previously live webcasts, you can go to Microsoft.com/webcasts, and it's a whole bunch of ways. You can actually search by product, and you can find a whole bunch of webcasts on a lot of different topics. So great place to go check for more webcasts. If you have a webcast content idea, we always love to hear from you. This URL right over here. If you go File, Print to PDF, you can grab all these URLs. But if you want to contact us, give us a suggestion about a future webcast, love to hear it. I do also like to get feedback from everyone. We'd love to get feedback from you. By attending today's live webcast and submitting an evaluation, which is up on your screen right now, you'll be entered into a drawing for a Zune portable media player. Kind of nice little incentive there to fill out the survey. I'll leave this survey up for the remainder of the webcast while we're answering your questions. And Nick, I see we got a few questions in the queue. Would you like to answer those? Yeah.
So one of the questions that's up here is a question around FRX and Forecaster and how that fits into the kind of the Microsoft BI approach. And I'll kind of extend that, how that fits into the performance point approach. So FRX Forecaster, another technology that's been brought into the Microsoft kind of suite of business intelligence products. And FRX is really starting to, it hits on kind of the mid-market or kind of small to medium business in terms of a tool that can be used for forecasting and things to the kind of nature of forecasting and kind of futures planning. The strategy around FRX and Forecaster is to build that into Performance Point. So if you think about Performance Point server and the direction they're heading, kind of all roads lead towards Performance Point. So beyond that, I mean, I think that's where I'll kind of leave the statement, but look for FRX and Forecaster to kind of merge their way into what is Performance Point and that functionality to be built into Performance Point, and Performance Point really to be kind of the what we're leading with in terms of the future direction 1 to 2 years out in terms of performance management, planning, budgeting, forecasting, and that type of approach. I have another question here about KPIs and SharePoint. And in Office 2007, there is functionality within SharePoint to build out KPIs, as well as functionality within Business Scorecard Manager that I touched on today around key performance indicators. And yes, it is true that you can build out key performance indicators within SharePoint. One thing that I'd caveat, though, is that what are those key performance indicators that you would be building out within SharePoint really connected to? So SharePoint will have that functionality to build that in, but it's really, we need to look at how that's aligned to information that's residing in your data warehouse and residing in your data sources. So, and that's functionality that we're going to look towards a scorecarding tool like Business Scorecard Manager and what will become Performance Point to do. Now, let's take a look at another question here. Another question that I've got is around Excel and new data mining capabilities within Excel. This is a good point. There is a number of new features within Office 2007 in Excel. A number of new kind of BI-related functionality features, and data mining capabilities is one of those features. With Excel services, you can now connect directly to analysis services. Again, pulling information out of analysis services cube and being able to quite simply be able to manipulate and paint context around that information directly within Excel. And there's new features as well within Excel around formatting, conditional formatting, to give numbers and paint numbers in much more of a visual context. So some new features being built into Excel, and I think as you see, kind of see the Microsoft story around business intelligence progress, more and more emphasis will kind of reside with Excel, because Excel is, you know, such a strong platform that everybody is using. So you'll see a lot more capabilities built into Excel, and Excel really being an extension of what you can do from a business intelligence perspective.
And Nick, I just want to note, there is another webcast you are presenting in April 12th, Business Intelligence for Financial Professionals. Just want to let everyone know I'm posting the URL for you to register for that webcast if you have interest in that as well. Go ahead and continue. I see there are a number of questions about other webcasts. So I wanted to
yeah, I saw a few of those as well.
Yes.
So there is another question here from Bill Walter around kind of the integrated end-to-end slide that I showed, and the components that make up that slide. And if someone has Office 2007, SQL 2005, and Windows Server 2003, kind of what are the other minimum purchases required around the things that were showed today. So around that stack, again, yeah, hitting on SQL Server, and SQL Server again incorporates reporting services, analysis services, and integration services. So buying SQL Server, you get all that functionality. The Office 2007 system, as well as SharePoint. So Microsoft Office SharePoint Server is another requirement. And then as we get up into that top of the stack, the performance point piece. Today, what's available to buy is Business Scorecard Manager and ProClarity. Those are the two components that are available today. Later this year, you'll be able to buy Performance Point. Now, Performance Point, the prerequisites are to have Microsoft Office SharePoint Server as well as SQL Server. So hopefully that paints the picture for the things that you need in terms of what I showed today. And if we think back to that stack on those three layers of having SQL Server, SharePoint, and Performance Point, kind of those are the three things that we need to have to start to think about these solutions in the performance management approach. So I think I've answered pretty much all the questions here. If anybody else has a question, please feel free to send it in.
Okay, excellent. And, I'm showing no further questions at this time as well. So I do want to thank Nick Smith for presenting today and thank everyone for attending today's webcast. I've also posted the survey URL in the question manager down there. If you're not able to see it in live meeting, you can go ahead and access it via that URL. Just copy and paste it into a browser. I've tested it out. It looks like it's working just fine. So before you go, I encourage you to fill out the survey. It'll enter you into a drawing for a Zoom portable media player as well. I want to thank everyone for attending today. That concludes today's Momentum webcast. You may now disconnect from the audio portion of this conference.